So I'm going to roll right into it, and I start the show and talk about how I kind of see the industry. Last year we were here and we were talking about, oh man, we need a rule, we need something so we could get out there and start working, and we actually have it now. We have the Part 107, which I thought was pretty liberal. The testing, it doesn't require a practical test. With a little bit of studying and maybe a little bit of help, you can go and get your Part 107 license, and you can go out there and start making money. So, we're here now. I still think that there's a lot of room in the visual line of sight envelope to make some money, and this is kind of what I tell my students. I teach here at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. And this is kind of where I think the money's at with the data. And you'll notice it's an upside-down wedding cake. You may have heard that before. There's the 3 grades. There's the artistic, which is kind of pretty pictures. You might be able to sell those and make some money. There's commercial. I watch some TV, and I've noticed that every car dealership uses drone video. It's not usually high-quality drone video, but they're using that. Real estate agents are using it, and there's some money to be made in the commercial grade. But where I really think that the money is going to be made here in the future is regulatory grade data. And that regulatory grade data is going to indemnify you against lawsuits and regulatory action. I talked to a lot of people in the course of a year. A lot of them from Fortune 500 companies or worldwide companies, large companies, and they're like, oh, we're just starting a drone program, and we bought a Phantom, and it's going to do everything. And it's like, we should talk about that, because that's not really the reality of things. My thing with it is, if you're going to try and get regulatory grade data, it has to be kind of a scientific and repeatable process. Something that Bob from Scranton can do and Jimmy from Sheboygan can do. It's a process that you have written down and you've developed into your workflow to gather the data that you can gather from a drone. It's not magical. Most of these companies already have a process to capture regulatory grade data. They just have to figure out how to integrate the drone and the data that the drone can afford them into their workflow. Good one would be Bill English from the NTSB. They were asking him, how are you going to train people all around the country to use drones to do investigations? So, why would you train people to do what you're an expert at? You just need to learn how to, bring that drone into your workflow. And that's where I always kind of thought the money was in this industry, is self-guided data collection. Somebody in the field that's an expert already is using this to get the data that they know they need. So, moving forward, the state of the drone business. I thought it was kind of interesting that the 107 kicked off, and it wasn't even a week later we hear that 3D Robotics had financial trouble, which was kind of interesting. But since that, even I think it was last week or the week before, it was announced that they got another $53 million in funding. And so they're a little back in the game. The other companies, Parrot and Unique, they were also going to be sponsors of this. They've come into some financial troubles and dropped out. GoPro, nobody really knows what's going on there. Has anybody seen the Karma out flying in the wild? We got one hand. I've actually seen more Karmas fly than the Unique Typhoon H. So I haven't seen any of them in the wild. I don't know. And then Autel, I hear they're having some issues too. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if there's a market glut as far as consumer drones are concerned, or a lot of people I talk to say that since the registration task force, sales have cooled. We will hear later from Colin about where he thinks this stuff's at. Get a little insight into that. Another thing we have is the forecast with the numbers and the need for the registration task force. People were, there was already 1 million sold. There's going to be 2 million sold this year. We got another 700,000 at Christmas. I don't know that there was this dire need as they had said over at the DOT. One of the things I've been talking about is science and defining the risk before we go and make policy. Again, some of these, we're 15 months in and they say, oh, we got 770,000 drones registered. Well, reality is only really 40,000 of those are commercial and the rest are just hobbyists that used to be unregulated, that were supposed to be unregulated, and they're out just flying around. So I don't know that we can really call those numbers a milestone or whatever. They say, oh, there's more unmanned aircraft than there are registered aircraft. If you count the hobbyists, and I don't really count them, I think it's a shame that they got regulated. This is another thing. We start talking about UTM, which we're going to hear more about, but okay, so these are the numbers that we have in the United States, and if you look at the bottom half of this list, those states didn't even crack 1,000 certificated operators. So my question is how much UTM do we really need? I mean, even here in California, if we don't even have 4,000 certificated operators, do we really need to spend, who knows how much to facilitate a special air traffic control for drones? More forecast numbers from the FAA, and I've kind of beat this drum, and I know Colin has beat this drum too. There are some forecasts out there that were, let's say, telephone numbers, and then people took the telephone number forecast and then they extrapolated the numbers and put more, let's say, questionable numbers into that, and have said, oh, we're gonna, we're gonna have here by 2021, we're gonna have 1.6 million drones flying around, commercial drones in the NAS. I think that number is totally nuts, wild out there. I don't think any of that's going to happen if we have the current state that we do. The other thing, with the drone thing, people that have been in this industry for a long time will remember that drones, we were going to change the world. We were going to make, feed hungry people and be better stewards of our resources and, protect the earth. And now it's kind of, we're delivering food, we're delivering, medical marijuana. Uber's going to have, a drone taxi that's going to fly you around by 2017 on your cell phone. Whole Foods is getting into it. I kind of look at it now when a company is like, yeah, we're going to have drone delivery, or like Range Rover where we're going to have a drone in the car, is like, sales must be lagging and we need to, sex our product up a little bit. Also, we're having to deal with some of these where people are flying contraband around and there are drones in places that shouldn't be. And I'm one that kind of believes in some counter UAS stuff. I think that there are places where we shouldn't have drones, critical infrastructure places, power plants, things like that, military bases, whatever else. We'll have some other speakers talk about that. This was kind of a funny thing. This is how I feel if I was going to have a conversation with maybe Jeff Bezos or someone else who wanted to do drone delivery.
I went in. I am talking about giving you $100 million.
That's not going to do it.
150.
Love to help you, but I can't.
175.
I wish I could. I'm just thinking if it, no.
275. $300 million. How far do we got to go?
If you go above 4, we might have something.
I can do that.
And it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's kind of how I feel. If someone were to say, hey, I want to do drone delivery and deliver for Google or Amazon, I think that's what it's going to cost. You're going to have something that's certified. Your software is going to have to be certified. You're going to have something that really looks like some sort of aircraft that you can go to the other stakeholders and say, hey, this is what we developed. The software is all certified. The components are certified as far as we can. Maybe like AeroVironment, I hear, is trying to do a type certification for Puma. I think that's kind of what you're going to need to do. I don't think people are going to tolerate drones falling out of the sky. I don't think that the other NAS stakeholders are going to go, hey, just do whatever you want. We're good with that. So I think you're going to have to get a little bit more serious about drone delivery if you really want to be in that field. Moving forward, I don't know how many people read the sUS news. Good. They say this every year. You should read it more. Wake up in the middle of the night and read it. I wrote an article about the DAC. And, I've been at this a while. I wasn't too impressed with what was going on at the DAC. I call it kind of a Groundhog Day thing. And people said, oh, well, wow, it's kind of negative. You didn't come up with any solutions. And I said, okay, I got a solution for you. And one of the solutions was a drone czar. And I nominated a couple of people for that. One of them sitting in the room, Doug Marshall. I think we need somebody that knows the history of this integration effort, knows what's been tried, knows the law, knows aviation, who can say when people, because I hear some real harebrained ideas people pop up. Oh, we're going to let local law enforcement enforce the FARs. I think we need somebody there for the reality check that could say, hey, you know what, that's not going to work. Or, whatever technology you think, like, maybe using light to control drones or whatever, hey, we're talking about immediate solutions. We need somebody that knows the background and understands this and could say, no, let's not waste any time on that. Let's stay on track. I think that's something we need. I nominated Doug, Parimal Kopitakar, PK, as most people know him, and James Grimsley. I thought those three people out of that are honest, integrous, and know the history, know what's going to work and what's not going to work. I don't know if the FAA will take me up on it, but I think that that's what's needed. I also still think we need to define the risk to the NAS, which hasn't been done. Better definition from the FAA on these performance-based standards. I keep hearing people, oh, we need performance-based standards. Well, what does that mean? Is it conjecture? Are we going to do some science and then go out and make the standards? What are we going to do? The other thing I think we need to do is stop pretending that drones are consumer electronics or aircraft. I feel like the community has a foot in both. When you're shooting my drone down, that's an aircraft. You can't shoot my aircraft down. Oh, you want us to be certified? Well, we're really only consumer products. We're like desk printers or hard drives. I think you can't have a foot in each camp. I don't think that's going to work. I think you got to decide we're either one. I think we need to standardize the waiver process, some sort of computer algorithm where people can put in their data and it's not something that everyone has to look at. Hey, it's 3 o'clock on Friday. I'm out of here. I'm just going to reject this one. And I'm not saying that happens, but you'd take that possibility out. Geofencing, as we're seeing in the news, is not viable. It wasn't viable the first go around. It's not viable the second go around. There are a lot of problems I think that are going to unfold over the year, this coming year, with data security. We're going to hear more about that. Who knows what, where, and when? As that story in China, if you guys saw that, we talked about that on sUS News. There were some drones flying near an airport. Chinese government said, hey, you're going to be liable for this. Hey, though, DJI said these weren't our drones, and a third-party app that they use in China said, no, they are your drones. So people know whose drones are whose and being flown where. And I don't know if people are not being totally forthcoming with what they know and what data they're collecting, but that's probably going to be an issue for people in that regulatory grade slice of the cake. Who knows what information you want to share about critical infrastructure or different industries. If you're in the oil or gas or energy exploration, you may not want to share your data. We talk, mining is a big thing for drones. Do you want to share your data with people? So I think that's going to be something that's going to be bigger in the year. The other thing we need to decide is where and how much UTM. I talked a little bit about that. Do we really want to spend, $50 million, $100 million, $400 million, $500 million on a UTM? Or maybe we should look back to traditional aviation and say, hey, the testing and the licensing needs to be a little bit more stringent, and the responsibility is on the RPIC. and he should know better, or she should know better, and if that person goes out there and breaks the law, then they're totally responsible for that. Instead of trying to make a one-size-fits-all solution for people that go to Best Buy or Walmart or Target and buy a drone. I don't think you're going to educate those people ever. The FAA, oh, we need education. We need to know before you fly. Most people, the feedback I get on that app is the map data is not good. It varies from day to day. It lacks kind of an aviation feel, in my estimation. That and a lot of the education is, let's say, preaching to the choir. Well, we're going to send out another thing to the AMA. Most of the AMA membership already knows that. If you look at 770,000 or however many people you want to say are registering their aircraft, I forget what the AMA membership is right now, but I want to say it's around 200,000. Does anyone know? Right now? So there's a lot of people who are not in the AMA that are flying that need to be educated, and I've talked to the FAA about that, but we'll see what happens. That's another thing is all these groups start up. There's Universal, there's Global UTM, there's a new UTM group starting up every week. I ask these 4 questions and I can't get answers out of anybody who's, the Secretary General or Grand Poobah or whatever. I said, hey, what's this going to look like? Well, we don't know yet. Okay, where will it be? We don't know where it's needed. How much is it going to cost? We don't know. Who's going to pay for that? Can't have, 40,000 people or 30,000 people can't pay user fees for hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure. And I think a lot of the droners thought, well, the FAA just pay for it, install it all, and we'll pay it for it over the next 20 years. That's not how it works. So I think we need to ask those questions. The other thing is a lot of people say, oh, well, it's going to be this, autonomous program. You click the computer on and you leave it and it runs and does everything automatically. I think you're going to have a hard time selling that to the air traffic control folks, especially the union. And then also the certification for the program and the computer system and the networking and all the rest of that's going to cost a lot of money. And it's going to have to be like 100% reliable or 99.999999999% reliable. The demos that I've seen, people are showing me demos and the program crashed. I tell people, if you do a demo for the FAA, like with a drone or a program or whatever, and you have a failure, you might as well just shut your company, change the name, and move on to something else, because you will never live that down. But anyway, those are just the things we need to look at. One shout out I want to give is to Assure. They just put out a report, and golly gee willikers, the plastic drone hitting you in the head is less lethal than the block of steel. Who'd have thunk it? It's crazy talk. I was really against the registration task force and the 250 grams because the report that was put together on that didn't make any sense whatsoever. It's two different things, a shrapnel from explosion or a plastic drone. I think the industry got duped on that one, and they're paying the price for it now. But anyway, I think this is great. We definitely need more science before we have regulation.